Hello, and you're very, very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Hurley, and a big weekend of Gaelic games, not in terms of games. Obviously, there's a lot of quarterfinals this weekend. There's 2 quarterfinals in the Hurling Championship, 4 preliminary quarterfinals in the Football Championship, 2 Tailteann Cup games, and we're still at the group stage for the Camogie and the LGFA Championships in the All-Ireland Series as well. Delighted to be joined by Seamus Brady from Clare this evening to discuss the games at the weekend. A shout out to our sponsors before we get started at Capture Athletics. If you want the best gear around, check them out if you haven't already. So yeah, Seamus, as we said over the last few weeks, less games but more important games in the last few weeks, and it's definitely ramping up this weekend. And even I counted, we have 18 games, but 10 of them are LGFA and Camogie. We have 8 in men's games, and 2 of them are Tailteann Cup. So really 6 senior men's games to look at, which isn't too many, but again, important games to look at.
Certainly, Matthew, and thanks for having me back on again. Looking forward to jumping in. I got a cup of tea beside me, freshly made. Looking forward to diving in now to have a good GA discussion. You're right, the championship is winding down now, which is absolutely nuts in terms of the amount of teams that are left. Obviously, it's ramping up in terms of the importance of the games and the consequences for defeat and everything like that. But this is, as I said, this is football at its best. This is knockout football. There's serious consequences for the losers now. None of these games will have flat feelings off it. Like any of the preliminary quarterfinals are going to be serious atmospheres at these games because the loser leaves town, and that's one of the best atmospheres you could have in Gaelic football. The hurling as well. Like, I'm definitely nervous for the Dublin Cork game, no question. I know that Cork have the potential to rip us to shreds. Like I've seen Cork do it to Tipperary, so we're going to have to come with a game plan. I think Wexford and Clare is really interesting because I actually believe that Clare are a wounded animal right now, and they could either, I see it going 2 ways. I see Clare either completely dismantling Wexford or Wexford actually turning them over, because Clare are hurt right now and it feels slightly more devastating than the 2 previous years. And that's not recency bias, because if you looked at the 2 Munster finals over the past 2 years, you could make the case that Clare could come back next year and beat Limerick once and for all. Not this time. Like, they were off the pace, and that's why this game against Wexford is massive, because it feels like their final chance to be taken serious as Limerick's rivals with the current team that they have of Conlon, Kelly, like before a lot of them hit the door. Like, so it's a massive weekend of action. LGFA is ramping up as well. Like, you've got Meath and Tipperary playing basically a loser leaves town game in the group stage. You've got Camogie action, which is absolutely huge as well. Like, it's really kicking off now.
Exactly. So we have comments actually flowing in before we get started as well. Denise, as always, saying hello, Matthew and Seamus, entering the business end of the championship. No, and absolutely, Denise, 3 comments in here from Joseph before we get started as well. Cork footballers blow the game they should have won versus Tyrone. Yeah, we'll get on to the Cork footballers in just a tick as well. They're playing against Louth, obviously, this weekend in a scheme. For the hurlers, the Cork by 10 over Brittle Dublin. Dublin don't travel well to Munster, playing Munster teams, and we will get on to Dublin and Cork in a bit as well. But firstly, we'll get on to the week in Gaelic games, and one story that grabbed the headlines in Gaelic games this week was the retirement of James Dolan. Obviously, speed wing back, cornerback, he can play anywhere along the back line. Obviously, the Garrycastle native retired after 13 years of his service to the Lake County. His last game for Westmeath obviously was the 2-7 to 9 points defeat against Derry. Dolan managed 80 goals and 25 points in his senior inter-county career for Derry. That, for a defender, is absolutely incredible. Like, you have to take your hat off to him. His greatest achievement, though, you have to say, he was actually on this very podcast, episode 22. Check it out if you haven't already. And obviously a sound man as well, James. And obviously, for me, James, best of luck in your retirement, man. Absolutely brilliant player for Westmeath down through the years. Probably the highlight of his career was that goal against Kildare, the Leinster semi-final in 2016. But Seamus, it's a big loss to Westmeath football, obviously losing another Dolan, this time in James. But yeah, he's had an absolutely incredible career.
Incredible career, incredible servant to Westmeath Gaelic football. And you look, I'd say probably the pinnacle of his career, as well as the goal against Kildare, was definitely winning the Tailteann Cup with Westmeath in 2022, becoming the inaugural Tailteann Cup champions. And that day for Westmeath was just a magical day. I mean, you got Kieran Martin coming on, scoring the goal, and everything just seemed to fall into place for Westmeath on the day, and it was a magical performance. And then James Dolan was very, very important in Westmeath's famous victory over Meath in 2015, the one where Heslin scored the goal at the end, and that was it. Westmeath had beaten Meath, and that was one of the most amazing results of that summer's championship. So he's the type of player that the GAA is really built on. Like that type of player that, like, you know, when you look at the superstars and everything like that, that brings its own pressure, that being a superstar and having the burden of the team on you. But someone like a James Dolan, who just is such a good footballer and just turns up again and again and again. As you said, 13 years he served for Westmeath. And you have to think as well, like, what we don't really understand when we're watching this is, like, we look at the players as if they're only players. They're not. They're human beings. Like, this guy has definitely sacrificed a lot of holidays, parties, nights out, weddings, everything like this. He's definitely sacrificed a lot of stuff to play for Westmeath, and he deserves the utmost credit and respect for the career that he's had. And one of the biggest things we sometimes get wrong in Gaelic football and in hurling is to look at how many All-Irelands, Leinster championships, provincial championships that they've won to deem how good a career was. No, like, that obviously is the height, like the pinnacle of success. But in terms of consistency, commitment, and quality as a footballer, he was right up there with the best in the country at the peak of his powers. And I genuinely believe, like, Dolan at his best would have started for most county teams around the country. Like, he was a flying wing back. A type of player that you like to see, as you said, the amount of goals he scored for a wing back, like, it shows you how adventurous he was, and it shows you how skillful he was and competent in front of the goal. So yeah, absolutely incredible career. Another Dolan steps away for Westmeath, but we long deserved his retirement, and wish him all the best.
Exactly, and all the best from the podcast to James Dolan on his retirement. An absolutely incredible servant to Westmeath, as Seamus mentioned there. 13 years, as mentioned, is an incredible tally of years to have in a Westmeath shirt for James Dolan. Best of luck in his retirement, putting the feet up, I'm guessing, for him. So maybe a touch on something as well that we discussed last week about the trial games and the sandbox games. Nigel Dunn from Offaly said they went pretty well, and Eamon Fitzmaurice was saying there was a few tweaks that's needed on the Sunday game, but they're relatively, they all went well. And very good discussion actually with Eamon Fitzmaurice, Kieran Whelan, and Lee Keegan on the Sunday game last week as well. One point I wanted to mention to you, Seamus, that we actually discussed this rule that we thought should be brought in about the respect between referees and players. There was an incident at Euro 2024 where it has been brought in the soccer. That last night, actually, Scotland were playing Switzerland, and Scott McTominay, the Scottish midfielder, got booked for actually protesting to the referee when Andrew Robertson, the Scotland captain, should have been protesting, not Scott McTominay. So it has been brought into effect at Euro 2024. If you complain and you're not the captain of the team, you're going to get booked. So, and it shows in Euro 2024, it does work. And Richie Sadler and Stephen Kelly actually discussed it in depth last night, saying that, yes, there is the added, emotion in the game amongst the players, but maybe it's the right thing to do, because the first probably protocol for any players, whatever sport it is to blame the referee for errors or whatever. So when Scott McTominay complained to the referee and got booked, maybe there was a changing of the guard in soccer, that was in Euro 2024. If they bring it into Gaelic games, could that be the changing of guards in Gaelic football or hurling?
Yeah, absolutely, because what it does is it sets a culture. So if you look at, for example, in the rugby, the amount of physical hits that are going in on players, and the amount of times that, like, their head's hot and everything like that, and they've just been ragdolled. Maybe they feel like they've been felled, but you never see it to Six Nations. You never see a rugby player go up and shout at the referee. You just don't see it happen, because it's not part of the culture to do it anymore. The GAA needs to stamp out, like, the dissent to the referee. You shouldn't even be allowed to complain to the ref, because what happens is, if you open the door and say you're allowed to complain to the referee, that opens the door to you're allowed verbally have a go at the ref, which may lead to throwing in a few swear words, name calling, everything like that. And especially then if the players are doing it, the fans are more likely to do it. And it leads to a very toxic atmosphere around the referees, which has a knock-on effect. And everybody says, oh, the ref, this and that. And I found when I put on my TikTok, we're talking about how the referees, remember the referee got pushed over in the Tullamore game. I put out the TikTok saying, like, you know, that guy should be banned. Most people were saying, yes, absolutely agree. But there were a lot of people who were saying, like, calling me a snowflake and, you know, the referee deserved it and da-da-da. Because, like, but the reality is, get this, if the referees are not safe in their position, we are not going to get the best referees to do the job. We're not going to get people growing up who want to be a referee. It's not going to happen. We need people who are happy to be referees, because then we'll get the best referees, and then the games will be officiated way better. Like, if you see this, like, how many referees do we have in the GAA that make big mistakes yet get put on a match the next week? Because we've got no options. We've got, like, a scarcity of referees who are willing to do the inter-county jobs because of the abuse that they get, the level of the abuse that they get, especially in club games. So I absolutely think that you need to shut the door at the beginning. You need to shut the door at the beginning. You're not allowed to even complain to the referee, because a lot of people say that there's a lot of footballers and hurlers around the middle, and I've seen this in club matches that I've played. There's a lot of midfielders who are just in the referee's ear the whole game, and they are influencing the ref on some level. They're influencing the referee just on some level. Like, they'll say to the ref, he's after fouling me there again. Ref, he's doing this. Ref, he's doing that. And they're not actually, like, having a go at the ref, but they're, like, planting seeds in the ref's head. And they're just playing a bit of a mind game. You shouldn't be allowed to speak to the referee. And if the ref says something, whatever it is, that's that. Referee's decision is final. And they can communicate with the fourth official. They can communicate with the umpires. But you have to change the culture around how we treat referees and how we deal with referees. Because this, like, what happened in Tullamore last year, that's not the first time that's happened in the GAA. It's not. Like, I've been reading a bit of GAA lately, like a few books. We're reading a book right now, the biggest controversies in GAA history. It's a really, really good book. And basically, it's by John Scally, I think. And there's a lot of referee-related content in the book about how referees have been treated in games in the 90s, in the 80s, in the early 2000s. Like, this has been going on for a while. So the culture is deep about how we treat our referees and everything like that. We need to change that. And if you bring in respect to the referees and that they don't get sledged and that they don't get abused and they don't get verbally abused, you will attract better referees. That's just, like, it will go hand in hand. Will you still have some referees making mistakes? Yes, but if you have more options as to who can referee games, then referees' individual mistakes can actually lead to them not being put on the next game because we have more options available. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was a brilliant rule we brought in by UEFA about only the captains being able to speak to the referee. And even Ray Houghton was mentioning on commentary, that's his normal reaction of any sports player, whether it be soccer, whether it be Gaelic games, whether it be rugby, to go up to the referee and start complaining. You're in the heat of the battle. But then when you actually analyse it a small bit more, what Richie Sadler and Stephen Kelly actually did last night, you see that the referees have a lot to deal with in the pitch rather than players bickering in the ear. So I think it was a brilliant thing that UEFA brought in. Maybe it's something that the games should bring in. We'll have to see in the future years.
If rugby could stamp it out. Because to get this, what makes your head go quick? Like, what makes your head go the fastest? Physical contact. If you get flattened in Gaelic football and you feel like you should have got a free, your head will go quick because you think you should have got a free and you didn't. Rugby is way more physical, yet they managed to change the culture around rugby to where the players don't have a go at the referee. So if you can do it in rugby, you can definitely do it in Gaelic football and hurling too.
Yeah, definitely so. And it is definitely a discussion that should be talked about in future for Gaelic games, and maybe for the sandbox games we'll have to see in future years. A few comments coming in about the hurling from Acers here. Cork will absolutely destroy Dublin. Cork to score 5 goals by minimum. We'll discuss Cork and Dublin in a bit, but we'll discuss Clare Wexford first, and he's saying about Clare Wexford game here, it could go to extra time. So yes, that is the game we're going to start with, because I think there's a lot more jeopardy in this game, obviously, because of the two sides maybe being evenly matched. Clare against Wexford, Seppin Stadium, Thurles, quarter-final in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship on Saturday at 3:15 p.m. huge game, obviously. You could see it going either way. But before we get into the game, Seamus, the timing of it, 3:15 on a Saturday, and Cork and Dublin 1:15 on a Saturday, whereas the Tailteann Cup is on at 2 and 4 on a Sunday. That has nothing to do with TV schedules. That's just the schedule for Gaelic games being on. What's your opinions on that? It's a bit... I don't know, a lot of people coming out this week, Eddie Brennan saying the soccer should be over, hurling. Colin Parks was saying that the rugby should be over hurling. Some people say the Tailteann Cup should be over hurling. So what's your own opinion on this? Like, maybe a lot of people were saying that these games should be at the forefront this weekend, but look at the times, they're clearly not.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't say that they should be at the forefront this weekend. I mean, the Tailteann Cup was brought in for the reasons of giving players from the lower tier competitions their due respect and their day in the sun. So 2 and 4 on Sunday in Croke Park at the GAHQ, the biggest stadium in the country, that's given them the respect that the Tailteann Cup was brought in for. If they were to swap it around, you are taking away from that. The reality is as well is Cork and Dublin is going to be a game where, like, you would imagine the Cork will win. I think like both of the Tailteann Cup semi-finals are 50-50 games. Like Down and Sligo, look, you would make Down favourites, but Sligo could definitely take them. And Antrim and Laois, it's a massive opportunity for both of those sides to make it to a national final. So I would say that I think that they have a lot to contend with. They've got the Euros. Like, how on earth do you balance all that coverage? You've got rugby. Like, I think that they've done good this weekend in terms of the scheduling and trying to keep everybody happy, because while yes, you have, you know, the people in the GA sphere who have their voice, who voice their opinion and say that the hurling should be on at these times or whatsoever, you have a ton of people the other way who are football fans, rugby fans, who would immediately raise their voices if you did it the other way. So they're caught between a rock and a hard place, and I have no issues with what time the games are on at. Like, as long as it's made public and we know where to watch it, when to watch it. It's not like it's on at 11 o'clock in the morning. Like 1:45 is still, or 1:15, it's still a grand time to watch the game. So, yeah, I'm happy enough with it.
A lot of people have different views on it, but we don't want to go over controversial on this podcast, so we will discuss the games now. Clare against Wexford, evenly matched game, obviously. And Clare, with the performance that they gave in the Munster final, losing by 6 points, that was almost like they got worse after years of threatening Limerick. Whereas Wexford, ever since the Antrim game, the end of that, they beat Galway, they beat Carlow quite comprehensively. Against Kilkenny, they actually beat them from play, if you look at the stats. They beat Laois quite comprehensively as well in the preliminary quarter-final. Like, Wexford are coming into this game quietly under the radar. Clare, there's a reason for them to be scared, I think.
Yeah, there definitely is, because you look at 2022 when they had just gone toe-to-toe with Limerick in one of the best games I've ever seen. It took them a lot to overcome Wexford that time as well, if you remember. So, like, absolutely, this is a dangerous, dangerous game for Clare. It's kind of like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, could they actually be caught? If they get through this game, are they on the other side of the draw to Limerick?
If they get through this game, they play Kilkenny in the semi.
Okay. So if they get through this game, it's Limerick, most likely Cork. If they get through this game, it's probably going to be Limerick, Cork on one side, Kilkenny, Clare on the other. I have this thing, and I said it at the start, I said it to Dan Casey on GA Hour, that I just have this feeling that if you look through the history books, it's always been the team's biggest rival that's been there waiting to try and stop them do the 5 in a row. And I just have a feeling like we are yet to see a Clare versus Limerick showpiece in an All-Ireland final. So I said at the start of the year that I thought that maybe this is the year that we would see that. I think Wexford are an absolute threat in this game. Major, major threat. But I'll go with kind of what I want to happen. I do want Clare to play Limerick in an All-Ireland final at least once in my lifetime. I would obviously love the underdog to win. I would love if Cork or Clare win the All-Ireland by the time it's done. Obviously, if Dublin don't. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Clare are more likely to beat Limerick than Wexford, though.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. Actually, look at the records on Know the Game. It's quite interesting, actually. Look at it. They've had 11 in the last 11 championship meetings between the side. Wexford have only won once against Clare. That's obviously qualifier game in 2014, where Clare were coming in as All-Ireland champions. Actually, they beat them 225 to 222 after extra time. All the other games Clare have won. In fact, Clare have won 4 out of the last 4 championship meetings between the sides, including that game in 2022, where Wexford were nearly the better team throughout the day. Then Aaron Shanahan comes on the pitch and causes havoc. They beat them in Thurles as well in 2021 during COVID. 2020 they beat them in Portlaoise during COVID. 2018 they beat them in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the All-Ireland quarter-final as well. So Clare seem to have the upper hand on Wexford. Is that a bit of a surprise to you that Wexford haven't beaten Clare as much as many people think? They've only beaten them once, according to this website, in the last 11 meetings.
It certainly does when you look at like the golden teams that Wexford have had. Especially around like the late 90s and everything like that, like the All-Ireland win of 96, the Leinster Championship win of 04. Like they've had some really, really good teams, Wexford. And then obviously the Leinster win of 2019, but obviously they just haven't ran into each other that much. Yeah, I think like especially you look at 2022, that was a big loss for Wexford that they didn't get over the line that day. Like Lee Chin, I remember again, was immense. He is absolutely on fire right now. You make it like Lee Chin would walk into any team in the country. I don't care. Lee Chin would start for Limerick. He would start for Cork. He would start for anybody. He is an unbelievable hurler. He immediately is the one that Clare are going to have to stop. And it's going to be interesting to see what Wexford do with him. Will they put him in full forward? Will they move him out to centre forward? Like, what will they do? It's so difficult to call because you look at it this way. Wexford's form is good, but they always have the potential to drop their form. Clare have really got, a lot of soul searching to do after that Munster final because I don't think they ever really hit the level that they're capable of in that Munster final. I don't think there was one stage of the game where I thought Clare were playing at their best. So they've got a lot of soul searching to do. It's going to show this weekend whether or not they've done enough of it, whether or not they've found themselves, whether or not they've found their rhythm. Because if they haven't, I could see Wexford overturning them in this game because Wexford are clicking now under Rossiter. They definitely are. You look at the Laois game, like they're definitely, I know that people would say, oh, Laois are not Clare. Yeah, they're not. But we're looking at the Wexford Laois game to see if Wexford ironed out the creases in their performances and their patchy performances where one day they can beat Kilkenny, the next day they can lose to Westmeath. Now they look like they're more on it. They're more consistent. I would be confident going into this game that Wexford will rattle Clare, like really, really stick it up to them. And it's going to go down to the wire. I'll narrowly go for a Clare win, though, by a point.
Few comments coming in here. Firstly, from Joseph, Wexford could have beaten Kilkenny, and Kilkenny are real All-Ireland contenders. The lead saying here the Wexford versus Clare match will be a titanic battle. I would lean towards Clare by 2 after extra time, but will be by no means an easy win. And Joseph is saying here, Clare, if they beat Wexford, will not beat Kilkenny. Croke Park. Kilkenny are improving very well. Clare not on form compared to last year. Yeah, it's interesting points there. Actually, look at the top scorers list. Just for the context for our listeners or viewers, Lee Chin is the top scorer of the championship so far with 3 goals and 65 points. Wexford also have the top scorer from play in the championship, which is Conor MacDonald with 314. Not only that, when you look at the top scorers from play list in this championship, Lee Chin's thereabouts as well with 119, and Rory O'Connor's there with 119 as well. So the firepower that Wexford have, maybe this could be a brilliant chance for Wexford to overcome Clare, because you look at the firepower there on the top scorers lists. Like, that's a lot of firepower. Like, Rory O'Connor's doing well, Lee Chin's doing well, Conor MacDonald's probably having his best year, in my opinion, in a long time. So, like, there is scope there for Wexford to improve game on game. And you have the younger players like Keane Byrne, Corey Byrne, Dunbar, who've done well throughout the year. And Keith Rossiter seems to be building a nice little team there as well. So there's every opportunity that Wexford cause a shock. Look at them stats.
It definitely is. And like, that was the question as well, always around Wexford, was like, it was Lee Chin and the cast. Like, do you know what I mean? Lee Chin was the guy, the main guy. Like, don't get me wrong, he still is. But the supporting cast have definitely upped their game this year. Rory O'Connor is definitely in a lot more lethal form. Conor MacDonald, Keane Byrne obviously coming to the side, made a big impression. And like, he was picked by a lot of people, including ourselves, as one to watch at the start of the year. They definitely have tidied up their squad. Like, there's no question, they're a solid team. I wouldn't say that they're all All-Ireland contenders, but I'd say that they're well capable of taking Clare out in this game. It's a dangerous game for Clare. Wexford would have been prepared for them. I guarantee Rossiter would have been sitting there looking at that Munster final thinking, if we're being brutally honest, I think he would have been sitting there thinking, we're probably going to be playing Clare. So they definitely would have had a plan for both teams. Like they definitely would have had a plan for Limerick as well, should it have been that they would have played Limerick. But they definitely were starting to plan for Clare long before the Munster final. And they would have been studying how Clare get ready for a game. If there's a power outage again in Thurles, I will be very suspicious.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see if the gods are against Clare. Look at that. Owen's asking a question here. Surely Alan Connolly has more than Matt Donald from play. What he means. The answer is no, Owen. Conor McDonald has 3 goals and 14 points. Alan Connolly has 4 goals and 7. So there you go. But Connolly, to be fair, did score in the Offaly game. He only got 3 touches of the ball, according to Owen Carmichael, but we'll discuss Cork in a sec. Joseph is commenting here as well. Chin is the player of the Leinster Championship. Pity that he did not get to the Leinster final. That draw versus Dublin in Wexford. Yeah, that is a pity as well that Wexford did draw to Dublin, because like there was every opportunity that Wexford could have beaten that Dublin team. But on Clare for a sec, and the main question that I have about this Clare team, I had it before the Munster final and I'm going to ask it again. Tony Kelly started eventually in that Munster final against Limerick. Does he start this game?
He has to. Again, he's Tony Kelly. Like you have to play him, especially when you look around and you see like the talent that he brings to the table. That is just game changing. It's vital though for Clare, because like genuinely, you look at Tony Kelly, right, and I think there's good examples there. Like John O'Dwyer is an example, Richie Hogan's an example. Like of players who were magicians and then they picked up just a few. Joe Canning's an example, funnily enough. Like players that were magicians and they picked up bad injuries and then they just could never quite get back to full fitness consistently for a full year. Like you look at when Richie came back, when Joe came back, they usually came back for a couple of games here and there, and then like they were gone, or they got the injury again, or they redid the injury and then they'd be out. And you look at Tony Kelly and the issues fitness wise that he's had, you would hope that it's not the end of seeing Tony Kelly at his best, because that guy at his best has been genuinely some of the best hurling I've ever seen anybody play. Kelly has to start, because like it's all or nothing for Clare. Like they have to go hard or go home. Because like in this game, if you don't beat Wexford are very much on Clare's level in this game. They are in no position. They are in no situation whatsoever where they can afford to rest Kelly. They need their best 15 players on the pitch, and Tony Kelly is definitely one of them.
Exactly, and Joseph actually concurs with you, Seamus. 100% Kelly has to start. There's no more room to lose. It's all or nothing now. And yeah, I'd agree. Absolutely agree. He has to start this game. And you have Shane O'Donnell in the forward line, obviously Peter Duggan. To me, honestly, Seamus, it looked like in the Limerick game, which worried me from a Clare point of view. John Conlon and David Fitzgerald could hold their heads up high. They performed brilliantly in that final. But when you look at the rest of the team for Clare, they were very, very under par, in my opinion. So is there a worry there for Clare that their performance levels aren't up to the levels that it has been over the previous 2 seasons?
Yeah, no, they definitely haven't. They've stuttered in terms of like trying to get up to the top levels. Like I thought in the first game of the Munster Championship, they were flat too. I remember like a lot of people were saying, oh, Limerick were flat and they were lucky to beat Clare. Clare nearly beat them. Clare were bang average in that game as well. Like Clare weren't good. Limerick were just slightly better. But like Clare blew that game. And if Clare had played at their 2022 level in the Munster final against Limerick in round 1, they would have wiped them out. They would have absolutely annihilated them. So Clare were not at their best by any stretch of the imagination. They played well against Cork to beat Cork. They were very good. They were good against Waterford because Waterford gave them one hell of a crack in that game as well. And against Tip, they were good. They're okay. They just kind of got the job done. But in the Munster final, I thought that they really struggled to get going. And if they go out of the championship in this game against Wexford, then I think they'd be very disappointed with their year. And it would raise a lot of questions about the league again.
Yeah, exactly. Renee has actually commented here. If I was Clare, I'd be worried about scoring efficiency. I would as well. Like the scoring efficiency was very, very low against Limerick, and it was probably the same errors in big games over the past few seasons for Clare, which seemed to be mellowed out in the league, but it seemed to be rising up again. But you expect Clare to win this game despite their faults and despite Wexford's improvements?
Slightly, yeah. I'm still going to say, I'm going to say that Clare absolutely get rattled into by Wexford, and Wexford gives them hell. But I'll just go for Clare to shade it. Kind of think a showdown of what I think are, in terms of skill, ability, the best 4 teams in the country. Having them showdown would be absolute box office. So I think I will go for Clare. Even though actually Wexford, there's another box to tick off either way for Limerick here. If Wexford win this game, I think Wexford are one of the only teams that Limerick have yet to play in Championship since they started dominating everything. So would be something left for Limerick to tick off. I'll still go for Clare to win, though, by a point. In a war, Clare to win by a point.
I'm going to go for Clare as well. And actually, I'm going to go for slightly, obviously, Wexford are going to put it up to them. But coincidentally, if Wexford do win this game, go against our predictions, then Wexford will play Limerick in the semi-finals because they can't, provided obviously that Cork beat Dublin, because it did try to avoid provincial pairings. So it'll be Wexford against Limerick and Cork against Kilkenny. So the draw will be flipped on its head if Wexford managed to get the job done here. So it'll be a massive game to call, obviously, but we're both going for a Clare win here. Aces is saying here, wondering who David Fitzgerald would be shouting for. Good question. Good question. If we talk about Davy in this podcast, we're going to get clipped up. So I think we'll move swiftly on. We'll talk about Dublin and Cork next in Simple Stadium, Tortoise at 1:15 on RT1. Huge game, obviously. Clare Wexford is on RT1 as well. I forgot to mention that. So Dublin haven't beaten Cork in the championship since, I'm looking to know the score here, since 1927. Do you see that championship stat changing this weekend?
Probably not. If I'm being honest, I was kind of looking more so at, we were so close to Kilkenny and Parnell Park. I went into the Leinster final with a lot of hope. I was very impressed with that performance against Galway. I think that it brings it back into question, and this isn't looking back and reframing, but we did start well against Galway, but then Galway were more or less taking over and the red card happened. Look, and you can't take away Dublin with a better side on the day. You're much better. We took over from that point on. But that performance definitely, I bought it, and I was like, you know what? I think we can really give Kilkenny a good rattle in the Leinster final. And I looked at the Wexford win in 2019, where it was just a bit chaotic, and Wexford got the big moments, like the Mark Fanning penalty. And I just remember thinking, you know what? If we can just hold them for 50, 60 minutes and just, I don't know, something crazy happens where Donald Burke just sticks one in the top corner, and then bang, we could beat them, which would be unbelievable. And then within 3 minutes, Owen Cody had the ball in the net, and I just kind of knew we were in big trouble. So this game, it's scary for the reasons that Cork are coming into it off the back of just incredible momentum. Cork right now, hurling fever has hit the county. And you look at the crowd that turned up to the Limerick game, the crowd that turned up to the Tipperary game where they took over Semple Stadium. And then, the Offaly game as well, Champagne hurling, which Cork still had a lot to work on, but their forward line again was clicking, 5 goals past Offaly. And you combine that with looking at how Dublin got on against Clare last year at the same stage, where we held in there for about 25 minutes. And then the scoreline went from being about, we were only 4 points behind, and then we were about 12 points behind inside 5 minutes. So Cork have the power to do that to us. I saw that against Tipperary. Cork were ruthless. They wanted to put the foot down and put a real full stop on, we are better than Tipperary. And they're one of the best teams in the country right now. I would say the most likely to stop Limerick after seeing the Munster final. I think if anybody's stopping them, it's Cork. And yeah, I could see Dublin holding in the game in the first half for periods, but I do think eventually the dam will break, and I think Cork will win this game probably by about 3 10 points. I don't really want to say, I love this Dublin team, but having seen how Kilkenny just absolutely, I have to speak the honest truth. I think when you look at how Kilkenny just put the burners on Cork, I think have a better forward line than Kilkenny. And it's just the signs aren't good. I think we have a team full of warriors, and we could definitely battle to some sort of a close game at stages, but I think eventually Cork are going to hit a purple patch, and I think the damage that they can do in that purple patch is just, I don't think we can do that same damage ourselves.
Yeah, and I suppose look at the top scorers overall as well. Donald Burke is the top scorer, second top scorer off Lee Chin with 2 goals and 60 points. But when you look at the top scorers from play, only one Dublin player's in the list, Conor Burke with 114. The amount of Cork players on the list, 3 of them. Alan Connolly with 4 goals and 7 points, Darragh Fitzgibbons 17 points, and Shane Barrett with 2 goals and 11. And Hoggy, to be fair to Patrick Harkin, isn't doing too badly either, with 5 goals and 47 points from overall this season. And he is 10 points off the record, and TJ Reid going into this weekend as well. So it seems like Dublin do have the likes of Conor Burke, Donald Burke, who are performing well, and Brian Hayes to an extent as well in midfield. But when you list them Cork players, the Barretts, the Horgans, the Conleys, the Brian Hayeses, the Darragh Fitzgibbons, you just don't see a way how Dublin will stop Cork. And look at Clare last year, the way Clare dismantled Dublin when Donald Burke went off the pitch. Actually, is it so important to Dublin that Donald Burke stays on the pitch for the full 70 minutes here for Dublin to have any sort of chance?
Absolutely, because we need to score every free that we get. if Cork foul us, we need to punish it. We need to score every free that we get. And Donald Burke is also our best shooter from out around the midfield. Donald Burke is dead eye accuracy. So we need to keep him fit. We need to keep him on the field. And just in a general manner of things, if I'm ever previewing a game and trying to work out how close I think it is, I think I always look at if you were to make it, I know it's a stupid thing to look at, but it just gives me a little idea. I'm do you know what? If you were to make a combined starting 15 out of Cork and Dublin, how many Dublin players would actually start for Cork? And I think you can say Owen O'Donnell would definitely go in my opinion, at fullback. I think he'd be a big plus to the Cork team, by the way. You could make a case that Chris Crummey would start at right halfback. I think he's been immense this season. Conor Burke, you could maybe argue he goes in at midfield alongside Fitzgibbon. I know Ethan Toomey's been amazing. Donald Burke goes in the forwards, I'd probably say somewhere there. And then I don't think anybody else goes in. So if you're saying that you're making a combined team and 11 of them will be Cork players, how can you say that Dublin are going to beat Cork? It's just, I think we are going into this game as massive underdogs, but we are massive underdogs against, if we were massive underdogs in the past, we have pulled out some big wins. Galway, we were underdogs, and we did manage to get over the line in that game. So, and did it in very impressive fashion. But this is a whole other ball game to playing against Galway. Galway were flat. Galway didn't show any signs of resistance or resilience. And even though they were playing well, the minute David Burke got sent off, they folded in like a sandcastle. Cork have shown serious resilience this year. Cork were literally milliseconds away from going out of the championship up until Hoggy got his penalty and Brian Hayes hit over the winner. Well, what proved to be the insurance point against Limerick. And then they doubled down on it by annihilating Tipperary and staying in the championship the next week. Cork have shown incredible resilience. So if Dublin even get a good start and hit a goal very quick, Cork won't blink. Cork will just go and do their thing. So I wouldn't say it will be an absolute battering. I don't think we'll be 17, 18 points. I don't think we'll be as bad as the Tipperary game, but I would say it'll probably be around 8 points, 9 points. Cork win.
Interesting. Yeah, and Renee is commenting here. Any of you going to the match? I'm not. I'm going to Inniskeen on Sunday, so enough match. I might actually do a watch along on this channel, live watch along, but Seamus obviously can't watch the game either, so he's not going to the game either. So I'm sure there'll be a big crowd nonetheless in Thurles anyway. But just the thing about Cork actually, and a stat that was pointed out on X the other day, or an Echo Live article by Eamon Murphy, actually pointed out that only Limerick, since the group stages have been introduced, only Limerick in 2018 have actually gone from finishing third in the group to reaching an All-Ireland semi-final. No other team has done that. And obviously Limerick went on and won the All-Ireland that year. So is there an argument there that Dublin have the advantage of having a few weeks rest rather than Cork playing against Offaly last week? Or am I just clutching at straws here? And am I trying to make you happy, Seamus? Is it an advantage for Dublin to have the week's rest?
We definitely needed the week's rest. Make no mistake, we needed a week's rest to reset after the Leinster final. Let that game be in the past. Forget about it. It's done. You know, the opportunity came. It passed us by. We didn't turn up on the day. Dust ourselves down and go for Cork. We're not a bad team. And we will put it up to Cork for a while. I just don't think that we have the same level of skill in terms of like Clare or Limerick that we can trouble Cork in the same way going forward. But we are definitely made of sterner stuff than the Tipperary side currently. I do believe that not in terms of skill. Tipperary have more skillful hurlers like Jason Forwards and everything like that, but we have more determination and will not to give up. And like the Mark Rogan goal, like against Kilkenny, like that, sure, that was right at the death. Like we didn't stop going until the end. We were just, up against the better team on the day. But we kept going until the end. And like against Cork, we're not going to fold and give up. Cork will probably be better than us, but we're not going to give up. We're not going to throw the towel in. And I think we will fight until the last second. And I think we'll do the badge proud. But I do think this is where the journey ends. I think Cork will ultimately come out on top. But I think just a special shout out, like Danny Sutcliffe this year has been immense. Like, especially you look at the Kilkenny game in Parnell Park, he was amazing. Galway, he was amazing as well. Chris Crummey's been brilliant. Owen O'Donnell's been brilliant. Conor Burke to midfield has been a genius move by Micheál Donoghue. Donald Burke has come back to fitness. He's been really, really good. Like, we have taken big steps forward this year, but I think Cork are at a further stage of evolution. I think Cork will win.
Yeah, I think Cork will get over the line as well. Dublin have to wait longer for...
Brian Hayes, for a guy who's been his debut year, he's been fantastic. And his goal against Kilkenny was probably the highlight of my hurling summer so far.
And to be fair, Dublin have provided a lot of highlights for Dublin hurling fans this year, and hopefully they'll carry on that momentum this year. But we are both predicting a Cork win, and that one, which sets up obviously the Limerick game if Clare gets over Wexford in the other game. That is absolutely mouth-watering if it does happen. We'll move on to the Camogie before we get on to the preliminary quarterfinals in the men's football first. And we'll start off at the tables. So Group 1, just to give our viewers and listeners a bit of context in the Camogie, there is 3 games played from every team. So there's 2 games to go in the 6-team group in each group. So we'll start off with Group 1. Tipperary have won 3 games out of 3. Kilkenny, they're on 9 points, obviously. Kilkenny on 7 points, having drawn to Waterford in the last round of games. Derry, look at them in 3rd place with 6 points. What a job they've done, obviously winning the intermediate All-Ireland last year, and they're up in the quarter-final places at the moment. Obviously, that could change. Waterford in 4th place with 4 points, and then on 0 points at the bottom is both Limerick and Antrim. They'll be fighting relegation, obviously, depending on the Premier Intermediate champions of the Camogie as well, whether it be a B team or whether it be an A team from either Kerry or whatever. So we'll start off with Group 1. Firstly, the 3 games are Kilkenny against Derry at 1:30 on Saturday. That game is in St. Lachlan's or St. Lachlan's GA Club in Kilkenny. Limerick against Tipperary in Rathkeale at 2 p.m. on Saturday, and Antrim against Waterford in Lockheed Shamrocks GA Club at 12:30 p.m. on Saturday. I think these 3 games, Seamus, are probably self-explanatory. Kilkenny, Tipperary and Waterford to win them, but Derry, word on them, what a season they've had, 3rd on the table, and can they overturn Kilkenny? I know it's going to be difficult away from home, but they're definitely riding with confidence.
They've had a brilliant year, especially when you consider they lost the league final in Division 2 Camogie League final. They lost that to Westmeath. Like, they've been absolutely brilliant, and players like Anya Barton, Aoife Shaw have been incredible. So I definitely would say that they've done the badge proud, but it is 3 relatively clean sweeps there. I see nothing other than Kilkenny, Tip and Waterford all coming out on top in this weekend's round of fixtures.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it'll be difficult for Derry to get past once those fixtures end. On to Group 2. Cork are at 9 points there, 3 wins from 3 for the All-Ireland champions under Ger Manley. Galway are at 7 points in second place. Dublin are at 6 points. Clare on 3. Wexford down near the bottom at 1 point. That's a bit surprising. They do play down this weekend, so maybe they'll pick up points there. But Dublin do play down, as far as I know, in the last round of fixtures. So that's going to be difficult for Wexford to even get into a quarter-final place now, and down obviously at the bottom with 6 points. So the games here are Galway against Clare in Athenroy, on Saturday at 3 p.m. That's live on the official Camogie YouTube channel. We've Cork against Dublin in Super Value Park Keeve on Saturday at 2 p.m. Bit of a downer actually. This game is on the same time as the hurling between the two sides of 1:15. Look, it is what it is. And then Wexford against Down in New Ross at 2 p.m. on Saturday. You'd expect Wexford to get over the line there. Probably Cork to get over the line. Maybe Galway. Even I know it's the live game, but Clare absolutely got hammered the last day out against Cork. So you'd be very surprised if it wasn't Galway, Cork, and Wexford coming out top here.
I would be, yeah. I think Dublin are definitely taking massive steps forward this season. Ash Maher's move to centre back has actually proved to be a bit of a masterstroke. And in the forwards, like definitely clicking Aisling Gannon and players like that are really, really stepping up to the fore. But Cork are the All-Ireland champions for a reason, and I do think they will win that game. Looking elsewhere, I do expect Galway to beat Clare without too much fuss, and Wexford definitely to get a win on the board against Down. Look, they've already drawn against Galway. They've proven to be tricky, and I think they'll be fine. I don't think they're going down. I think they'll pick up a win against Down and get themselves flying again.
Yeah, probably Dublin will be in the quarterfinals despite a loss to Cork. And the way the Camogie actually works is first place in each group gets the All-Ireland semi-finals. Second and third place gets into the All-Ireland quarterfinals. It's second against in Group 1 against third in Group 2 and vice versa. So that's how the Camogie Championship does work. So that is the Camogie and hurling wrapped up. We'll move on to the Gaelic football now. And the first game would have been mouthwatering maybe in April, May. But considering the form of the team going to Castlebar this weekend, maybe not so. Maybe not so for some people, that is. Mayo against Derry in McHale Park in Castlebar, Saturday, 6:30 p.m. on GA Go. I listened to the football pod. I don't know, did you do that this week, Seamus? James O'Donoghue, who actually, in his 12-team ranking, had Derry in third place, and he actually fancied Derry to overcome Mayo in this game. Can Derry make a U-turn and overcome Mayo? They were very poor last weekend against Westmeath, but they went out on top. They still won the game 2-9 to 7 points. Can they improve their performance by a long shot and beat this Mayo team, who were very, very good last Sunday against Dublin?
I don't think so. I'm being honest, man. Like I think when you look at the Westmeath game, I think it's a situation of this. I personally think from the Westmeath game, and I could be wrong, they could definitely prove me wrong against Mayo, but I think it was a case that Westmeath couldn't finish Derry off. I think Derry were there to be knocked out. And I think if Derry play the same way against Mayo, they'll not only lose, but they'll get absolutely annihilated. So I think in this game, do you see the issue is Derry have completely just, I don't know what has gone on with them since they came back after the league championship win, after the league title. I don't know what's happened to them. So they're in a situation where they smashed the league, they came back, nobody really knows what happened, but all of a sudden the Donegal game, the Galway game and the Armagh game were just absolute write-offs. They were just terrible on the day, and they persisted with that tactic of bringing Lynch out as if they enjoyed watching Oran Lynch run back to pick a ball out of his net. Like they did it over and over and over again. And you're looking at that situation like the Westmeath game. Personally, I think Westmeath just couldn't finish them off. And I think if they play that same way against Mayo, like I think it spells out big trouble for Derry, because you look at Mayo in this situation, Mayo will force Derry to dig deep to beat them. And the question isn't do Derry have the ability to beat Mayo? Of course they do. The question is, will they dig deep in order to find what it takes to beat Mayo in their own backyard? I don't think Derry are there. I don't think they're there mentally. And when you look at how long some of those lads have been on the road, like your Conor Glass, your Kieran McFall, your Ethan Doherty, who've been going for 2 years on the bounce pretty much. From Glen to Derry, back to Glen, back to Derry. I think they could do with the rest. Like when you look at this situation, like they'll be back here next year. And if Mickey is to go, whoever comes in will call upon Glass and Rodgers and McGuigan and everything like that, and the team will barely change. They'll just try a new manager with it. So I think they won't have the same grit and determination that Mayo will have. I think Mayo beat them. I think Mayo beat them by 5 points. I don't think it will go down to the wire. I think Mayo will be better. And I think Mayo will knock them out.
Is there a situation, to play devil's advocate from a Mayo point of view, that Mayo would have been mentally drained after that loss, or felt like a loss? Obviously, it was a draw to Dublin in Dr. Hyde Park last weekend. But you could see Kevin McStay's facial expressions in the interview on RT afterwards. He was absolutely devastated in drawing that game to Dublin when there was a clear chance for Mayo to win that game. And if Ciarán Kilkenny doesn't make that catch in the last minute, we could have been talking about a different story. We could have been talking about Dublin Derry here. But is there a situation from a Mayo point of view that they'll be so disappointed that the confidence will start to drain and Derry will find pockets in this team to overcome? I'm not saying Derry will win the game, but is there an opportunity there for Derry to do so, considering Mayo drew that game against Dublin last weekend when they had the win in their grasp?
Not really. Personally, I think Mayo are used to bouncing back from disappointments. Like, how many times have they done it over and over and over again? Like, I think McStay will definitely just sit them down, dust them off. Right, lads, we have a home game against Derry now. This is a perfect opportunity to make a massive statement, because if Mayo are the team to knock Derry out, it brings massive hype to Mayo, and like, Mayo always get a signature victory, and we haven't quite had it so far this year. So this is the perfect opportunity for them to do it. Like last year, it was beating Galway and beating Kerry as well in the opening round of the group stage. Like, we haven't had that for a while for Mayo now, for a big win that really jumps off the page. And if they're the team to knock Derry out, that would be a sweet one for McStay in his position. And like, I genuinely think, I think that there's no real debate here. I think Derry have shown us where they're at. They've shown that they're not on the same page. And you can say what you want about Mayo struggling to finish Dublin off last week. Dublin are on the same page as each other, and they're like dragging as a unit. Mayo are on the same page, and they will come back stronger into this game. Derry don't look like they're singing off the same hymn sheet. And I think when stuff really like hits and Derry have to dig deep and Mayo have to dig deep, I think Mayo are more willing to dig deep than Derry are to get over the line. And I think that will be the difference.
Coming in here for Denise, all Derry need is a good performance and win. I hope they don't, though, as Mayo supporter, but Derry have a gutsy performance left inside themselves. And that's a good point, actually, about Derry. Denise saying as well, interesting to mention that Mayo are appealing Fergal Bowden's red card. I thought it was harsh for a 2-match ban. You thought it'd be a 1-match ban for that red card against Roscommon, but clearly it's a 2-match ban. We'll have to see how that transpires. And speaking of red cards and bans, the Derry team has been announced just before we went on air here. Interesting name on the bench, Garth McKinless, number 23. Would you start him, Seamus? That's an interesting name there from the team sheet tonight.
In terms of talent, yes. They don't take away from his talent. The guy's a brilliant Gaelic footballer. I have absolutely zero respect for what he did to Damien Comer. I have zero respect for that, and there's no place for that in our sport. But as a footballer, he still is a cracking footballer. And is he in Derry's best team? Yes, he is. So if you want to win the game, stick him in.
Interesting, actually. Derry announced their team there. Ewan Mulholland keeps his place at corner forward. Emmett Bradley is a centre forward. You have Conor Glass, Brendan Rodgers still in midfield. Shane McGuigan, Lachlan Murray, all still there in the Derry team. So the big hitters are there. They are there in the starting 15 and the bench as well. So you'd be just wondering, James, I don't know who actually, yes, he had Derry in third, and a lot of people were quick to say that James deluded and his thoughts were maybe unprovoked and things like that. But he made a very good point actually in the football pod. They only lost the Donegal game when you look deep into it because of a kick-out malfunction with Owen Lynch going up further in the field. If that doesn't happen, maybe Derry go on and win the game and they don't concede in goals. The confidence then starts to drain for the games against Galway and Armagh. They were down to 14 men against Galway, obviously, with that McKinless sending off. I just wonder, will that Westmeath win? Will it be almost a kick up the backside win that they need? Just to say, we've got away with this one, lads. You can't get away with a bad performance here. So maybe there is a performance in Derry to shock people.
Maybe. But like, you see, this one is way different. If you manage to beat Mayo's a whole other ball game to beating Westmeath at home, more or less. It's in Park Hessler. Like, Derry have way more experience playing in Park Hessler than Westmeath do. So if you manage to beat Westmeath there, when Westmeath realistically could have finished you off, that's a whole other ball game to then going away to Mayo and beating them there. That's a whole different ball game. So if they win this, it might bring the confidence back. But my thing is the camaraderie in the squad between the players and Mickey Hart, it doesn't seem to be there. From anything that you hear online, from anything that seems to be going around, it doesn't seem like they're on the same page. And that's my question is, Mayo will always ask questions. The only reason why Dublin were able to beat Mayo in the 2010s games was because Dublin had the answers and Dublin were pulling together in the same direction so that they were ready to answer those questions that Mayo will ask you. I don't think Derry are ready to go through turbulence this weekend. I don't think, because Mayo are going to bring the heat. Like, Mayo are going to bring the aggression and the determination and the fast-paced running, and they can swallow you whole if you do that, if they do that. I think Derry might start well, but my thing is, it's very similar to how I saw Galway in the hurling. You might start well, but if you hit a bump, if someone gets black carded or if someone gets red carded or if there's an injury, I don't see them having the resilience to really knuckle down and drag a win out. I don't see them having the resilience to do that, because the one thing that I'm guaranteeing is Mayo are going to fight to the bitter end. Will Derry? I'm not sure. Mayo to win for me. No real debate.
You're being very, very stubborn on this, Seamus. You don't think Derry will put up a challenge? Look,
I think Derry might put up a challenge, but like, did they put up a challenge to Donegal once the tide turned? No. Did they put up a challenge to Galway when the tide turned? No. Did they do it with Armagh? No. So, like, yeah, they beat Westmeath, but like, they beat a team that played in Division 3. Like, all of a sudden we're saying they're going to beat Mayo. No. Mayo are going to beat them because Mayo are more willing to dig deep than Derry are right now. That's just the way I see things right now.
I'll put it to another way, maybe to change your opinion on this. When Mayo were the favourites going into a game against a team that were perceived to be under par and things like that in the championship in the last few seasons, did they get over the line? Specifically against Cork at the Gaelic grounds last year? No. Is there an opportunity there for Derry to overcome them? They have frailty in the Mayo team as well.
No, I don't like, but at least like Mayo. Interesting. I don't know, man. I think that it's Mayo's to. I think it's Mayo's to lose. I think Mayo are going to win.
There's no change in your mind. Look. I will say this. I think Derry will put up a test for the first few minutes, but Mayo might put away with some good scores at the age through Cillian O'Connor. Ryan O'Donoghue, who's the top scorer so far in the championship. Fergal Bone's not playing. And what am I saying? Dermot O'Connor, maybe for the bench to spark him into life. Tommy Conroy had a good game the last day with 3 points. He might get the score sheet in the last few minutes. And Mayo might pull away by a 3 or 4 point margin. I don't think it'll be over 5 points. I think Derry, there is still something in them. Surely. You have to show it this weekend. Surely there is with Derry, but we're both going for a Mayo win. Seamus thinks comprehensively. I'm thinking maybe not so much, but we'll see what happens this weekend. In the other preliminary quarterfinals, we'll start off with this one. Tyrone against Roscommon in Omagh on Saturday at 5 p.m. on GA Go. Now, this is another situation where Roscommon were a good team coming into the championship, but have very good players, like the likes of Darragh Craig, obviously, Enda Smith, Ben O'Carroll, if he is playing, Dermot Murtagh, some very good players as well. But Tyrone had a very good win last weekend. But throw spanner to the works. Con Kilpatrick is now out for 2 games, just been confirmed tonight. So is he going to be a big loss for Tyrone around the middle?
He would be absolutely a huge loss that he is gone, because he's been an absolutely vital player for them over the years. Ever since they won the All-Ireland, like, Con Kilpatrick has been a massive player for Tyrone. So it's massively important. It's a massive boost for Roscommon in the other sense that, like, they're going into this game underdogs for sure. It's away at the place where they lost in the league as well, so they have history of losing a big game, what turned out to be a big game here, and they have only won 1 game all year. So Tyrone definitely have been in better form over the course of the year, and if you look at it, in any game that Tyrone have been favourites, they've won. More or less. Tyrone haven't really slipped up this year. Any game where you made them favourites, Tyrone have won. They've been consistent. And they haven't been consistent over the last 2 years, but this year they've been consistent and they haven't really punched above their weight. Like, they haven't knocked a Kerry or a Dublin or Derry when they're at their best. Like, Derry, I don't mean to be harsh on Derry, like, as in, I think player for player, pound for pound, they're one of the best in the country still in terms of the ability that they have. But I said right now, I don't think they're singing from the same hymn sheet. But when they were, Tyrone didn't beat them. But Tyrone have beaten everybody else that they should be beating. So I think that, and they stayed in Division 1 with a very transitional team. And I think going into this weekend, the chance has been dangled right in front of them to make it to an All-Ireland quarter-final. I don't think they're turning it down. I think Tyrone will win.
I think Tyrone will win as well. But for Roscommon, like, is there an opportunity there for a shock whatsoever? Like, they weren't particularly bad against Cavan, scored 3 goals and 20 points, but there is the other side of the field. This conceded 1 goal and 20, and the over-reliance of the 3 guys up front, Conor Cox, Darragh Craig and Dermot Murtagh, is just too much in my opinion. So maybe Roscommon to fall short in this one like they usually do in these starts around. But they're going into this game probably not like the last 2 seasons against Clare and Cork, where they were favourites going into those 2 games. They're underdogs going into this one. Is there an opportunity that Roscommon could turn the tables?
I don't know. You see, because, like, again, it's the question of, have Roscommon shown us this year that they can punch above their weight? Have they done that against anybody? Like, they put it up to Mayo, ultimately they've lost. They put it up to Dublin for long stages, but when the dam broke, ultimately the dam broke. And Dublin really went to town, actually, in those last 10 minutes. It's just coming back to me there. Personally, I would say, like, if you look at it this way, it's a massive task for them to go away to Tyrone and beat them, especially Tyrone's side that, you know, smell a potential route deep into the championship now. Because if Tyrone can get past Roscommon into an All-Ireland quarter-final and maybe get someone like an Armagh, they definitely fancy their chances to get over the line in that game. And then that leaves them into an All-Ireland semi-final. So I think Tyrone definitely be perking up at this stage now, because they can smell how much further they can go. And I do think Tyrone's ceiling is higher than Roscommon's. But, yeah, it's an interesting game. I do think Tyrone will win. I'm going to say by about 4 points.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Tyrone as well by about 5 or 6, but we'll see what happens that weekend in Omagh. Galway against Monaghan is the last game on Saturday in the prelims, on 4 p.m. on GA Go. Monaghan have been very, very poor all year, but obviously the first win in the championship against Meath maybe sparked a bit of life into them. Galway have obviously performed much better than Monaghan in this championship, but there is injury news to Cian Darcy, and there was Sean Mulcairn going off injuries as well. Yeah, we don't know the situation about Damien Comer as well. So is there an opportunity there for Monaghan to overcome Galway, or am I clutching at straws? Because Meath really came back into the game against Monaghan, and we've seen how poor Meath have been all year.
Yeah, like, I think if you look at it, like, Meath dominated the final quarter against Monaghan, and Monaghan were hanging on for dear life. Like, they had the game in the bag, and it's like they tried their best to throw it out of the bag. Like, they definitely allowed Meath to roar back into the game, even though Meath were brilliant in those last 15 minutes and really showed how much they wanted it. Like, against Galway in this game, it's difficult because Galway are in good form. Galway, 3 in a row Connacht champions, good win against Derry in the group stage. And, good against Armagh in the draw. Like, they definitely didn't do anything that would have made me think that they're not in good form. Like, they definitely are. And when you consider how many players that they've been missing over the season, to be where they are and to have done what they've done on paper is impressive. Again, though, like, the injuries, man, like, how many injuries have they had? And, like, to lose another 2 players to injuries is just incredible. Like, that the misfortune that they have. Like, I wonder when the last time is that Galway have put out a starting 15 without somebody being out injured. So definitely it's vitally important that they get as many of those lads back as quick as possible, because, like, Comer and Walsh need to be playing together at their best for Galway to have a chance of winning the All-Ireland. So, yeah, that's what Galway are aiming for. Like, make no mistake, Joyce wants to win an All-Ireland with Galway. So to have any chance of doing that, Comer and Walsh need to be playing together, and they need to be clicking and playing at their best. In this game, I think Galway will win. I think Monaghan have been very below par this year, and this year has been, unfortunately anyway, a bit of a noticeable drop-off in their level, like especially compared to last year where they looked like they could really cause problems for anybody, and the way that they dragged Dublin to the bitter end. This year it's not been the same. I haven't seen the same fight in them, and I think this is where their run ends.
We're both predicting Galway winning this one before we end this game, because I don't think we're going to discuss it next week with the All-Ireland quarterfinals coming up. With Monaghan losing, and we both think that'll be the way. Conor McManus, it might be his last game this weekend, more than likely. What a servant he's been to Monaghan. Like, he'll be a huge miss to get games.
Oh yeah, like literally one of my favourite players to watch. I wouldn't write him off just yet, because a lot of people thought he would go after the All-Ireland semi-final last year against Dublin. But if he does go, I mean, what a servant, what a player. Like, it genuinely, there's an argument that he's definitely top 3, I would say, best footballers to never win an All-Ireland. Like, I think Lee Keegan for me is probably always going to be my number 1 in terms of footballer to not win an All-Ireland. I'd say McManus is probably number 2. Like, Matty Ford was always someone from Wexford that I always absolutely was literally my favourite footballer growing up. I think Matty Ford has to have a say there. Then you've got your Paddy Keenans, your Eamon O'Hara's, your Declan Browns, like, that are all in there. Kieran MacDonald as well, like, they're all in there with a shout. But I think for me, like, you have to look at McManus and go, like, this guy is just a warrior. And not only that, but you're looking at so many other Monaghan legends that could walk. This, like, Began, Darren Hughes, you know, who's got his injury, obviously. You know, Ryan Wiley, like, they've really had some legends in this Monaghan team. And, you know, it pities me that they haven't won more, because they really, really deserve it for the warriors that they are.
Yeah, it'll be, I'd imagine, a large exodus in Monaghan over the off season, but hopefully Conor does stay on for another one. But if he does retire, best of luck to Conor in his future endeavours. On to the last prelim, and this is on Sunday. Louth against Cork in Inniskeen in County Monaghan on Sunday, 3 p.m. on GAGO. I know I am going to the game as well. Will be a tight venue and in the middle of nowhere, apparently. But yeah, that's what you do to support the Cork footballers. But Cork obviously lost to Tyrone last weekend, probably a gut-wrenching defeat, let's be honest, for the players. Louth got hammered by Kerry last weekend, but would have eyed this preliminary quarter-final at home, obviously. Like, do you see Cork winning this game, being the outlier this weekend and being the only third-place side to get through? Coincidentally, actually, a stat, Cork were the only second-place team in the group stage to win their prelim last year. They could be the only third-place team to win this year. Like, it's absolutely incredible if it does happen. But then again, Louth, they've actually faced each other 4 times, Louth and Cork, over the last few seasons. Louth have won twice in the league, Cork have won twice in the championship. What way do you see this one going?
Do you know what, man? I'm being honest, I have a funny feeling Cork are going to win. Like, I really do. I have a funny feeling, because I don't know, there's something about breaking through that glass ceiling. There's something about, like, when you haven't done it before, it is daunting to go higher than you've gone in such a long time. And Louth haven't broken the glass ceiling to make it to the All-Ireland quarterfinals in such a long time. Cork have only done it last year. And Cork were there, and they were competitive against Derry in what wasn't a very nice game of Gaelic football to watch, but they were still competitive with them. And you would look at this and you would say, why not? Why can't Cork go away to Louth and beat them? And Louth will feel the pressure of, like, this is, like, with no disrespect to Cork, this is a winnable game for Louth. So the pressure will be on Louth to take advantage of what they have in front of them. It's not as appetizing a game. I really wanted to see Louth play Derry in this game. Like, I thought, like, the scenes, if Louth are to knock Derry out, would be absolutely off the charts. But I personally think that Cork might actually nick it. Is Brian Hurley back for this game, do you know? No.
Don't have a clue, to be honest, Seamus. The team will be announced in 10 minutes, actually. So
wow. He could be big. I think Hurley could have a big say on it if he is playing.
Quite, look, it seems like every time we're back against Cork, they win. And every time we're back for them, like last week against Tyrone, they lose. So... like, I can see this game going either way. I think this is the game that most people will say, considering Derry's form, obviously, this is the one prelim that could go either way. Like a bounce of a ball or anything like that, it's going to be a tight one to call. But what I will say from a low point of view, Niall Sharkey and Kieran Downey being missing are huge for them. Absolutely huge. Huge losses. Like Brian Hurley, yes, Brian Hurley's an outstanding player, but Cork still has Stephen Sherlock, Chris O'Jones, Conor Corbett, Mark Cronin to come in. Louth have a very thin squad.
Yeah.
That's my...
Niall Sharkey ran his legs into the ground against Dublin. He's such a key player for them.
Kieran Downey as well, the balls he gives into Samuel Roy, but playing that almost quarterback role, has scored a few goals in his time as well. Like Louth are going to miss them too. I'm sure they'll have better good players to replace them, but those are two huge losses. So I'm very looking forward to seeing Conor Grimes as well, how he'll shape up against a physically imposing the early Cork team with the likes of Colin Buchanan and Ian Maguire, because he's been exceptional in the championship too.
Yeah, no, he's been brilliant, especially against Dublin. He was fantastic. Like in the engine on the guy, his power, his pace. He's performed really, really well against Dublin, and the points he was kicking and everything. Like he was a brilliant player against Dublin. Caused James McCarthy a lot of problems. I would be interested because Cork are big. Cork are absolute units there in the middle. Ian Maguire, Colin O'Callaghan, Rory Dean. Like they're a very big physical team, and I feel like we'll see the best of Conor Grimes, Tommy Dern, and like they're going to have a battle on their hands. Yeah, I think this one's going to go down to the wire. I see it being no more than 2 points in it, but I think Cork will just about shade it.
The more I think about it, actually, and it pains me to say this, I think Louth will win it.
Yeah?
I think Louth will win it just because the likes of Tommy Durden's in his 30s now, Conor Grimes is time left of the clock, Samuel Roy might think this is our best opportunity to reach our first ever All-Ireland semi-final or quarter-final. That this is on the line for these Louth players as well. I think Cork will give it their all. I think they will. But the home advantage is massive. Absolutely massive. And especially in a tight pitch like in this scheme. I think Louth have it. I think Louth will do it. I think it'll be a point either way, but I think Louth will get over the line in this one. But we'll have to see what happens. Ace was asking here, it's a football quarterfinals an open draw. It is, yeah. Despite obviously Donegal can't play Cork or things like that. Dublin can't play Louth or Mayo. We'll see who wins this weekend, and we'll join the dots next weekend if we can. Tailteann Cup semi-finals are also on this weekend. We've Antrim against Laois in Croke Park at Sunday at 2 p.m. on RT2. These two sides wouldn't have expected to be here before the season even started. They were here last season, but with Kildare joining the party, with Fermanagh there as well. Antrim and Laois had a different story in the chapter, and one of these sides is going to be the Tailteann Cup final. It's huge for either side. Who do you think wins this?
It's massive for them, isn't it? Like it's a huge opportunity for both teams. I was more surprised with Laois's win. I definitely didn't see that one coming. I was absolutely shocked when I seen the scoreline come in. That a Laois side who had just struggled to beat New York the week previous had then turned around and beat Kildare. Like the week after that, it was an extraordinary turnaround by McNulty's side. I think it's massive for both teams. Antrim were here last year. They have a lot of firepower under Andy McEntee. Like they went toe-to-toe with Sligo and Drew in a game where they scored 20 points each. So I think Antrim have a little bit more ability to score freely. And I think based off that and based off their experience of being here at this same stage this time last year, I'll narrowly give it to Antrim. But it's a massive opportunity for both counties.
Massive opportunity. I'm going to back for Laois here. Justin McNulty's doing a superb job there. That win over Kildare will drive their adrenaline, and Killian Roach.
Could you imagine down and Laois in the final? 8 goals.
Hopefully that won't be the case. But I'm going to go for Laois win. Justin McNulty's doing an excellent job at the Laois team, obviously. This semi-final, a lot of people, including ourselves, obviously, would say that the winner will come from this semi-final. Down against Sligo, 4 p.m. on RT2 in Croke Park. These are the two favourites to win now with Kildare and Fermanagh out of the competition. Down have been many people's favourites at the start of the year. But you look at Sligo's scores, they've been absolutely incredible. Niall Murphy, them obviously Alan McLaughlin, Sean Carabine, Pat Spillane Jr. They've been absolutely superb so far. Will it be a step too far for them though? Down haven't been miraculously good or anything like that, but they've just got over the line in each and every game. So it'll be an interesting one to call.
This one is very, very interesting, and I would say that whoever wins this game would be favourites in the final, regardless of who comes out. I think I'm confident. I put my hand up there because I said right at the start that I thought that Down would win the Tailteann Cup. I said right at the start, no matter who goes in, I think Down are going to win the Tailteann Cup. We're here now at a semi-final stage. Down are here. And I do make them favourites to get over the line against Sligo. I think Sligo have been immense. I think like bringing in players like Canis Mulligan and everything like that into the senior side, he's just taken to it like a duck to water. He's absolutely born to be there. Sligo are only getting better, and they're only going to keep getting better. But I just think Down are slightly ahead of them in terms of how much they've evolved over the last few years. Down are a little bit more put together. They have a serious goal threat. And I think that Down will probably shade it in what will be a very entertaining game.
I'm going to go for Down win as well, but Sligo, with the scoring power that they have, will definitely put it up to Down in this game. And moving on to the LGFA, and there is a groups, obviously it's the last round of group games in all these competitions. So we'll start off with Group 1 because this is very, very intriguing. Obviously Armagh have the weekend off. Tipperary against Meath is the game, and we'll discuss that in a bit. If Tipperary win by 2 points or more, they'll top the group. And the significance of topping the group in the LGFA is you get a home quarter-final once it comes around. So Tipperary will play their home games in Semple Stadium or Fethard, wherever they want to play it. Meath have to win to stay in the championship this weekend. And obviously that is the game. Meath against Tipperary in Park Tailteann on Sunday, 3:30 live on TG Car. For this Meath team, it's a vital game for them just to prove that they are still around the big dogs. But it's a massive opportunity for Tipperary to top this group too.
It certainly is. Like, and you definitely wouldn't have said at the start that Tipperary would top the group. Like when you've seen kind of the form that Armagh were coming into, obviously before the Mackin injury, and then you're in there with Meath as well, who are All-Ireland champions of 2022, like me, and back-to-back as well. Like Meath have pedigree, even though they've lost a lot of players. So for Tipperary to be in this position is massive, massive credit to everybody involved there. Peter Creedon's doing a brilliant job. You've got Anna Rose Kennedy performing brilliantly. Ashton Maloney back in there, absolutely smashing it. And then them two were the two that got the goals, which ultimately got the draw against Armagh. So it's a huge opportunity for them. Ultimately, the Park Tailteann factor does need to be discussed. Meath have home advantage for this game. You know, their necks are on the line. I think they'll do enough to get over the line. They still have Emma Duggan, you know, at the peak of her powers now. Like, she's playing unbelievable stuff, even though Meath aren't really playing unbelievable stuff themselves. And look, they did nearly, you know, took a hell of an Armagh performance to beat them in the athletic rounds. Armagh only beat them by a point. So I think with home advantage against Tipperary, I think Meath will get over the line.
I'm going to go for Tipperary to win it. I just feel like Anna Rose Kennedy's in brilliant form. Obviously, you have Ashton Maloney there, Emma Morrissey. So I'm going to go for Tipperary to get over the line, get that home quarter-final. I think they'll win by 2 points as well. I think they'll do it. I think they'll win by 2 points and get top of the table there. Another group that's in the melting pot as well. Kerry are already guaranteed in the quarterfinals. It depends if they're home or not, depending on the Donegal-Waterford game, which we'll discuss in a bit as well. Depending on Donegal, Donegal needs to beat Waterford by 17 points, as far as I know, to top this group and get a home quarter-final. But Waterford will definitely give it their all, I'm sure, this game. And Waterford have to win to stay in the All-Ireland Championship to avoid a relegation playoff as well. And that is the game in Walsh Park in Waterford. Waterford against Donegal, Sunday, 1:30 p.m. on TG Car. Where do you think this will go, Seamus?
It's very, very difficult to call. Like, Donegal are inconsistent, but they're always capable of producing a performance, just like the one that they did against Kerry in round one, obviously, to draw with them. But they're a funny team, man, and Waterford are always capable of catching teams out in return. And the fact that this game is in Walsh Park, I think, is massive. Donegal have a long journey to make. Waterford are going to be waiting for them. Waterford have players like Mairead O'Brien, Lauren McGregor, and like they were very tricky in the league. Like, a lot of teams didn't like playing against Waterford. I actually have a feeling Waterford are going to beat them.
Shot prediction, that's shot prediction. I'm going to go for Donegal to win it.
I think Waterford are going to win.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, but I'm going to go for Donegal winning that one. Suzanne White's in brilliant form for them, and I think that should be enough for Donegal just to get over the line. But in second place, obviously, Kerry to top that group. The last two groups, obviously, there's a bit of inevitability about them. Galway against Laois, obviously neither side have picked up any point yet, but Galway are playing Laois. And look at the scoreline the Cork put up at Laois. They beat them by 23 points. So I'd imagine Galway will get over the line there. In Group 4, Dublin are playing against Kildare. You'd imagine Dublin will get over the line. Kildare on 0 points at the moment. Mayo and Dublin have 3 points each, but you'd imagine that Dublin will get over. So the 2 games here, Galway against Laois in Ballinasloe at 2 p.m. on TG4 YouTube, and they're up against Laois, obviously. And Kildare against Dublin in Hawkfield on Sunday at 2 p.m. on TG4 YouTube. Galway and Dublin to win these games, Seamus, I would imagine easily enough.
Yeah, it's difficult to call this one now in terms of can Kildare put up a challenge to Dublin. And like the thing is, we were looking at Kildare as like they rose through the ranks, like Division 2, they were unbelievable. The intermediate championship, obviously they won that in a gripping final, and you were thinking like, do we have another contender on the rise here? This year's like they've been shown the levels. They've been shown there's a real jump up from intermediate to senior, and Meath coming through the way they did was an exception, not the norm. And I think they found it hard against Mayo to compete. They found it hard against Meath and Dublin in the Leinster Championship to compete. I think they'll find it hard in this game to compete as well, because Dublin are thinking, you know what, we beat Mayo. We don't want to throw away a potential of getting a home quarter final. They will put their foot down and try to get the win in this game. And the fact, like, it's in Hawkfield won't make the slightest shadow of a difference to Dublin. I think Dublin will win this game by about 6 or 7 points. But which, like, Kildare can still take heart from how well that they have played this year. I just think they needed more time to get ready for this, and ultimately, hopefully, they can, not get relegated to the intermediate championship, save themselves, and stay up. But I think then if you look at the other game, Galway against Laois look completely outmatched at this level. Like, Cork bet them off the park, and we without players like Aaron Fitzpatrick, like it's really, really hit them. Like, Laois did have a small squad, and when you lose a player of the quality of Fitzpatrick, like, you really feel it. And like, that's, when you have a thin squad, all it takes is 1 or 2 players to step away, and all of a sudden you're nowhere near the team that you were. So I think Laois will be in trouble this weekend. I think Galway will put a bit of a beating on them. I think Galway will win.
Yeah, I think comprehensive wins for Galway and Dublin in them situations in the LGFA Championship there. So that is all the codes wrapped up for this weekend's action. Give the video a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Subscribe as well to the YouTube channel. It's just surpassed 300 subscribers. So hope to reach 500 or some number like that soon enough. So subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to Seamus for coming on today. Thanks to Capture Athletics for sponsoring tonight's show. And until next week, we'll see you all then, and enjoy the games at the weekend.